Okay, good morning, everyone. This morning, we have a couple of things on tap. First, we're going to hear from Representative Lawley on a bill introduction. Then we are going to do some work on H46 and do some markup while we're still taking testimony from witnesses and have some discussion about where we want to go with H46. And then we will see what happens after that. So we're a little bit in flux this week, just so you probably have already figured that out. Welcome, Representative Lawley. So happy to have you here.
Thank you.
I think you at least have seen us all around the State House, so we'll not do introductions, but thank you so much for being here. And the floor is yours to give us your elevator pitch about this bill.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. So I'm presenting a short form bill on continuing care retirement communities. And the genesis of this bill for me was learning how public transit is playing a critical role in helping older Vermonters access healthcare in rural Vermont. The need for these services is increasing as older Vermonters who often no longer drive live in homes that no longer meet their needs, often in isolated locations, and they are struggling to get to medical appointments and other daily needs. So continuing care retirement communities or life plan communities are a type of housing that addresses an older person's needs as they change over time from independent living to assisted living to skilled nursing care. My bill proposes that CCRCs, which is the acronym, could help Vermont expand housing and access to medical services to more seniors. And I want to propose that the timing is right to consider this as an approach because it works well with the housing and land use reform passed last biennium that reduces barriers to building this type of mixed use housing and in density in our downtowns with municipal water and sewer. So tying in transportation and land use to here. So I think
You're a planner after all, right?
Yeah. This is what I do. So I think Vermont needs more ideas to meet the challenges of our aging population and certainly with the disarray that both of our sectors are experiencing with what's going to happen with federal funding. So CCRCs can help Vermont address the challenges of seniors who own their own homes yet find themselves stuck in place in homes that no longer meet their needs. So they can benefit Vermonters who are not Medicaid dependent. Providing alternative housing for this demographic frees up existing family homes for younger Vermonters, which are homes that we don't have to figure out how to build, while conserving scarce Medicaid resources for those who are going to need it most. You obviously know more about this than I do, but my sense is that that's a demographic that may be growing. So CCRC is typically financed with the proceeds of a house sale. So it's, it is potentially a doable thing for some folks. So CCRCs could increase housing stock for older Vermonters who are able to self-insure, again, helping to conserve those Medicaid dollars. And they can help older Vermonters, I think most crucially, feel secure in their ability to pay for very costly end-of-life nursing care because cost of care is covered as the needs change. So it's not for everyone, but it is for a certain group of folks. It's my understanding that end-of-life nursing care may not be covered by conventional assisted living facilities, and that this can cause some to become Medicaid dependent at the end of their lives. So just throwing it out there as an idea. I know you guys are having to think about new ways of doing lots of things, and just wanted to throw this in the mix as something for us to consider. I also think that locating CCRCs in downtowns could encourage social engagement and physical activity that keeps older Vermonters healthier longer. The on-site healthcare that is provided, it seems to me, could expand into hubs that could provide primary care and other services in the broader community, which could make those services more cost effective for us to deliver in communities. And then finally, locating CCRCs in downtowns creates an employment anchor for high quality local jobs, going back to the planner in me. This can catalyze investment in new housing, things like daycare and other local businesses, and the additional residents might even populate our schools. So maybe it's a way to meet a bunch of different needs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so when the continuing care retirement communities, do we see examples of that in Vermont already?
Well, we only have one currently, and that is Wake Robin. That's in Shelburne, and that's actually not the model in many ways that I'm sort of imagining, because Wake Robin is outside of the village. It's sort of up on a hilltop, and I'm thinking of what if we thought of these as a kind of more hub that could be in a downtown someplace, because right now people are brought to shop in our local store,
Right.
things like that, in a van and that kind of thing. I'm thinking, what if we had them right in a downtown, which we're trying to sort of catalyze investment and development in any way. So that's really the idea. And we do have another example in Shelburne, which is the Champlain Housing Trust development that is right in our village. And, we've got it, the older folks who live there they volunteer in our community, which they tutor students, they can walk to the library, to many different services and the grocery store, other things that they need on a daily basis. And they're also right on a bus line. So
I'm wondering about what do you see as, sort of picking your brain now a little bit, what do you see as appropriate or feasible scale, in terms of the number of units that a place like this would? So I'm trying to think about, I'll use my town as an example. We have a downtown vacant lot that used to house 3 state buildings. That is, now the town is in the process of purchasing it. They plan to build housing on it, but I'm just thinking, it's right downtown. It's on municipal water. It's on municipal sewer. People can walk to the bank, to the store, to the library, to a church, to, anything a park across the street. I'm just am wondering though, a facility like that needs to have a certain sort of number of units in order to make it economically feasible, particularly if it's going to provide care from, somebody who is, mostly independent now to somebody who through their lifespan, might need to have nursing available, not dissimilar to a nursing facility. Maybe not quite as intense, but so what do you think about in terms of scale? Because not all downtowns have, sort of large tracts of land to be able to accommodate something like this.
Right. I don't know the answer to all of those questions in terms of how this would scale to Vermont. It might be something that would make more sense in some of our larger areas, like maybe like a St. Johnsbury, or maybe Waterbury is enough of a sort of a hub for this. But that would be just if this kind of made sense, that could be something to sort of start to explore. And it's potentially there could be affiliations, that could meet the needs for delivering more intense kinds of services to someone as they're, over time. I don't really know. I became kind of a big fan of these because my own mother was in one and had an unexpected health crisis that caused her to have to, go from independent into assisted living pretty quickly. And we were just so incredibly grateful for, what, the ability to just not have to worry about her with living far away.
Right.
And then during the pandemic, another health crisis, and she ended up in the nursing care. And again, it was, I don't know what we would have done. So, I've kind of become a big fan of these. It just seems like a fit for Vermont. And, one of the things that we've heard from folks in Wake Robin, which, kind of has this reputation as being a place for very wealthy people, that may have been the case originally, but it's really not the case now. There's quite a number of more middle income folks who are there. People who are sort of like planners, like they've very carefully invested and
They've thought about
saved and all of that. So
their age, yeah.
they don't want to be a burden on their children. And so,
Or they don't have any kids.
yeah. So that's who are often living in these places. It just seems like, I don't know, it's something we should kind of nurture a little bit, because who knows? I mean, there may even be opportunities to attract seniors who do have the capability to pay our taxes to come to Vermont.
Sure.
So, I just thrown it out there as an idea for exploring.
Yeah.
And
so what, are you proposing that the Agency of Human Services do something here in particular?
yeah, just kind of, I guess, look into this, really, the point was to just sort of start a conversation with you guys. Have limited experience, I'm a fan and I see the land use advantages, and that's about as far as my expertise goes. So, but it just seemed like maybe there would be something that would be beneficial. And I'm particularly interested in, with the challenges of providing primary care in particular, and, things like dentistry, in rural Vermont. Could there be some sort of, ancillary services that it might make sense to have if we had these locational efficiencies? We've already got sort of like a hub of medical care going on. Yeah. So,
Dan.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing this up, and I totally agree. We need to figure out how to build housing for older Vermonters, because it will open up stock. No one's going to leave their home unless they have a place to go.
yeah.
And right now, we don't have any place for a lot of older Vermonters to go, especially more in rural parts of the states. What do you see as barriers around land use? I mean, I think a lot of this is going to be around permitting, right? How do we get out of the way of someone who wants to build one of these?
Well, we do have some opportunities right now with the land use changes that have happened, that are quite a bit more friendly to something like this. And, I think, places that have sort of struggling or existing urban places that have been struggling and are lacking investment are sort of the low-hanging fruit for some places like this. So I think we'd have to kind of take a close look at how does our state permitting regime support this? But I think if everybody kind of agreed that this was a good idea, we could fix those barriers, whatever those might be.
I feel like some of the things that we've done in the last 2 years, particularly focusing on infill and downtown, where it doesn't help in the more rural areas where there might not be public utilities, actually can help facilitate something like this. I think when I think about envisioning something like this, I can see the more challenging piece would be finding the right mix of people to actually be interested in developing a continuing care community, you know, so I think that the place in Montpelier up on the hill, when you can see it coming down off the interstate, I can't remember the name of that, but
Ann Cummings is.
yeah, they actually have where, you know, it's, I don't know if it's like, because I've been to this one in Montpelier, but I haven't been to Shelburne, but you buy in and they do actually have continuing care there as well. So I'm not sure it's exactly like Wake Robin, but it is again, but not located in a downtown.
And that's the difference. And-
That's the
and
difference.
Yes.
I think that was sort of in some ways like the fashion or something, you know, in that era.
Yeah,
And now, you know, there's a lot of interest among, you know, people who are getting older. They want to be in a place that has many more social opportunities,
Yeah.
offers physical activity. So, you know, they see that as kind of a more isolated experience. And yeah.
and I can see also sort of a mixed use, you know, so it wouldn't have to be a total continuing care community. It could also be affordable apartments. I'm envisioning a new future in
Yes.
downtown Waterbury.
I was just gonna say, so in Essex, I don't know if you're familiar, but I think kind of hearing you describe this unintentionally, this is happening in some of the areas where there is kind of a hub of, you know, we have the Essex experience in Essex that has like a supermarket and, you know, a pharmacy, and that has, within that whole area, there's a couple of like senior living communities, buildings, right? But that, there's also primary care from UVM Medical Center within walking distance. So again, it's not a partnership, but what I find interesting in the last several years, it's attracted more developers to come in. There's a memory care building there now. There's another brand new senior living community that's for rent, but you know, again, it's a private, not like affordable housing. So it's just interesting that it's happening unintentionally in some places. So it makes sense, right? And I know the developer and the owner of the Essex Experience, every time there's a vacancy, he's looking at what is needed. Like, do we need medical? Do we need urgent care? Do we need like dent? Like, what's needed in that area to kind of fill the gaps for the so the mixed use of like having affordable, you know, rental units and, you know, more affordable care for older Vermonters, but having all those services around is key.
Where you don't have to be transported
Right,
to
you
be
can
part of a
just walk.
community.
Or if you're in a
you're
van,
in
it's like
you
a
know?
2-minute, you know, it's like half a mile away where you can walk if you have the ability, but there is a van to take you if you can't walk that
Mhm.
far.
Yeah.
There's a really kind of beautiful vision for some of this, and that it was at the Age Strong.
Yes,
Report.
yes.
Yeah.
As a result of our committee's work, yes.
Yeah. And so this is just kind of, you know, my idea of sort of like, well, how could this sort of start to happen? You know, noticing the how wonderful the sort of Champlain housing, is it Champlain housing?
Shelburne Road.
Yes, I think it's
Yeah.
Champlain Housing.
It is.
Okay, yeah, how well that's worked. And like I said, we've got, you know, those residents they're volunteering on a lot of our little local committees and things. And
Yeah.
it's age diverse, which I really like.
Exactly.
As opposed
Yeah,
to
that's what I'm talking about.
kind of very, this sort
Exactly.
of segregating thing that
Yeah.
we have gotten into.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Doug, and then Son.
I really am intrigued by the possibilities of co-locating things. Put in, you know, something that both serves the medical needs of residents, but also could be a community primary care
Yeah.
facility or childcare.
Mhm.
You know, my work experience before coming here was 9 years at the YMCA. And one of the things that the beauty of the Y as a location was it was all ages. It was everything from the infants and toddlers and childcare program, using the pool, to our senior fitness classes and everything in between. And to see how much, be a little hard to tell how much the infants and toddlers are enjoying that mix. But I know that the older members loved being in that environment, the vibrancy really added, and for them, they became so dependent, maybe is too strong, but how much they valued coming to the classes and being in the environment. So much so that when their instructor wanted to take a week off, there was almost revolt if they would miss their exercise class. So I love the possibilities too of co-location.
And can I just add, just because, my little transportation plug, this will make it could make it more affordable to have like transit that actually works, that somebody really wants to use, it's plausible to use as a way to live your life, but also make providing walking and bicycling infrastructure, or whatever the multimodal things that are coming our way in the future, a little less expensive to provide. We, unfortunately, probably won't be able to do it in all the places in Vermont that we want, but if we can create these sort of, great, wonderful hubs, we can do that.
Don?
I just want to observe that when you were talking earlier about the idea that there was a fashion for maybe out of town kind of situations, I see those as also being kind of like single developer projects. And what we're talking about here seems to me more like community planning.
Yeah.
And will involve many, many more partners, but developing the frameworks and the taste for that kind of thinking in communities is very attractive to me. Feels like it's a great way and an appropriate place for a community like this to engage. Yeah. I would also wanted to, are you aware of these? I'm aware of in the Netherlands, there are these amazing communities where there are dementia wards with high school kids or children, or there are programs also where college kids are where there are universities, college kids can live in dorms in which there are also seniors living. And so there are these wonderful connections that are sort of created opportunities, and so things like that, other opportunities.
Well, full disclosure, my mother was Belgian, and they have a tradition of something called the béguinage. That's a medieval housing type it was originally for widows, and that's where they made lace. That was their occupation, but they lived in the community in a sort of congregate housing, and so there's I think Vermont would be perfect for this, and we have the kind of community DNA, particularly in rural Vermont, where we know each other, we care about each other.
I saw one of those in Amsterdam. I was taken to one of those former women's places, and it was magical.
Yeah,
just magical. It's not that anymore, but now it's an amazing.
But I love the idea of the multi-age
Yeah.
thing. That seems like really needed right now in society at large.
Yeah, just trying to think of what this committee can do around our work, and looking at, perhaps model language for town plans or regional plans that kind of help direct communities to value these types of developments. And, if, you think about like a health and wellness section in a town plan that I think we've spoken about, is there working with the RPCs and H Strong about developing some sort of model, policy around how to get out of the way of this type
That's a
of.
great idea. Even almost, got a planner in me, like sort of templates for what this would look like, with model language, model town plan language, model, maybe even model bylaw language, but also just some, kind of design templates for a site plan that could work at the different scales of communities.
Go ahead, Todd.
We had until recently a eight-person assisted living place in the middle of Brandon, right by the grocery store. It's actually right by the parking lot, right in the middle of town. But they had to close down. They couldn't get staffing for it.
Oh, yeah.
But it was eight or nine people, and they were like semi-assisted. Like the most perfect spot, right there, right in the middle of town.
Mhm.
This is where that housing piece becomes so, a part of this, freeing up housing, that that is becoming maybe a burden for somebody to live.
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
You know,
Anyway,
um,
yeah, I can
Yeah,
honestly think of a 92-year-old friend who can't afford to put a new roof on her house, and so she can't get home insurance now.
right.
You know, but she doesn't want to leave because she can't imagine herself anyplace else, but she might be able to imagine herself
Yeah,
if there was something else.
there was an opportunity to age in your community, to stay in your
Exactly,
community.
yeah.
That is what, in Shelburne, that's what people tell us, is
Yeah.
that that's what aging, that's what, aging in place means to them. It means in your community, not necessarily in
Your
your
house.
in your house that, you
Yeah.
know, is, your family's long gone and you've got this big thing to take
Yeah.
care of and, yeah.
And I think, I just want you to know that you get bonus points for having even acknowledged that you know that there's an age-strong plan. You get bonus points for that.
Yeah, the AOT was very involved in
They were,
that. So,
yes.
yeah, so it's, you know, I think kind of weaving together land use and transportation,
Yeah.
which is hard to do with our kind of more siloed
Yeah.
jurisdictions. But
Yeah.
I just think, anyway, thank you so much for just hearing me out. And I'd love to see where you guys sort of run with this. You guys are the experts. I
love Dan's idea, honestly,
Yes.
of model language
Mhm.
and seeing what's out there. And that might give us some impetus to maybe get some regional planning folks in here, seeing what they actually do already or what they have already. And
Or what their ideas
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
I'm sure Chair Sheldon would love to get draft language from us.
Why don't you ask her on the floor too?
That's the beauty of the land use reform is like, we now know where we want this
Yeah.
to go and where we don't want it.
Yeah.
So we can, I think with some confidence, we can kind of move some things forward that would have been maybe more challenging as
Yeah.
as a year ago.
Yeah, and we tend to think about folks who are, in this committee, we tend to think about folks who are Medicaid eligible,
Mhm.
because that's generally the sort of group of people we end up addressing. But this also is preventing,
Yes.
has the potential to prevent people from being Medicaid eligible. And if they have an asset that, you know, they can think about in terms of how to invest that asset. Yeah.
You know, another thing we could even look at is, I know that BFHA had a 30% cap on age-specific housing in their portfolio, but really go through and look at our housing programs and look for barriers, especially around financing and, you know, what can we change to make it better for developers?
Yeah.
You know, like there's the criteria to be able to get a low interest loan for this type of development. You know, there's things like, is it within walking distance? You know, is it energy efficient? You know, to get the bonus, to get the points to be able to qualify for these low interest loans. I mean, we should have something in there that says, are you building housing for older Vermonters? You know, you get this many points towards your score, you know, age specific points instead of limiting it. I mean, I don't know if they changed it in the last round. I wrote them a letter, but 30% cap on age specific housing. It should be a 30% bonus.
Right.
Yeah.
The way I look at it, but you
No,
know, one-sided.
It's a good point. It's not one-sided. It's thinking about the whole,
Right.
you know, lifespan, you know.
Yeah.
So. Well, thank you, Kate, very much. We appreciate this conversation. Thank you. Hey, welcome, Katie. Hey, good morning. The other Kate has warmed up your seat for you, and so we have a surprise visit from Katie to help us with doing some markup on H46, the Rare Disease Advisory Council bill. So let's have some discussion about where people want to go with this bill. Why don't you pull it up on your iPads or your computer? And oh, look at that. You got it right on today's. Or you're just like on top of things.
That's always.
I know, right? I told her when she was sick last week, oh, yes, we know exactly how much we miss you when you're not here.
Except for those cookies. That's why.
Okay, we've heard some testimony. We've heard from the department. We've heard from some advocates, some individuals with lived experience. I'm interested to first off know, this is something that multiple people wanted to work on, and we heard some from the health department. We have a couple of avenues. We can put some money in this to assist the department. We could think about asking the department to do it without resources, which is what the bill currently does. We are trying to get some testimony from UVM because there was a suggestion, and we see from this map that there are other universities. There are some universities, particularly it looks like in the South, that do this work. And so we're checking in with UVM to get a witness there to see if they would have an interest in hosting a rare disease advisory council. But given the fact that so many people voted for this, I'm going to presume that we are wanting to move ahead with it in some format. What are people's thoughts about how this bill might be changed? Why don't we instead, let's just look to the second page. So we don't know where it would be created within yet, but let's talk about membership and thinking about how membership here might need some tweaking along the way. The first thing for me, I know, is I always like to see people with lived experience listed first in a membership because it's really about them. So if nobody has any objection, I'd like to list the people who are E as A. And then the people who are G as B.
Before we go to the
Yeah.
membership, can we address the with members potentially fulfilling multiple roles, member meets qualifications?
Yeah,
I feel like that, because
I think it's a little,
yeah.
we
I
wouldn't
think
know
that's
how many
weird.
members there are. Yeah.
Yeah, I think each member should represent their perspective, even if
They might wear multiple hats, but
Right.
that doesn't mean that they
Right.
fulfill more than one role.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Are people okay with that? Deleting that part?
Yeah.
What it does is that it could, the way it's written now, it's saying, for instance, a person living with a rare disease, or let's just say a caregiver, might also be a physician, it's possible. And so they would fulfill two roles, and that's not, I don't think. But I don't. No, okay. That's all right. I just making sure it's not something that we were wanting to. Sounds like people are okay with deleting that part. So
Should we get rid of the corresponding subdivision 2 on page 3? In the event there is an even number, the advisory council, after appointments are made, the governor appoints an additional member.
yeah, we don't need that.
number.
So we'll have an odd number. We'll make sure we have an odd number. Yeah, go ahead. This is discussion. So
Right,
as
right, okay.
long as we're not
I,
talking over each other.
this is sort of generic also. It's hard to kind of pick out as we go through, but I do think it may need to be a little bit smaller. That's a big group. And I look at the list, I'm not sure how who it might be to not include, but
I don't think we need DEVA, to be honest,
well, or DFR.
or DFR.
And
Yeah.
not, yes, financial regulation. So maybe just the Commissioner of Health and the Director of,
And I do think we need Dale, because they're
Yes.
people who provide services.
and I'm not sure, the Director of the Office of Racial Equity, I think it might be better to have a member of the Health Equity Commission. because includes disability, that includes all inequities in
yeah.
healthcare.
Yeah, yes, I agree.
Rather than, and I think that's what they were trying to get at.
Yeah,
Or, I think that'd be better because we've got the Department of Health. Department of Health now has a vision, whatever, for health equity, but I think the commission is better.
yeah, who knows how long.
Yeah,
they'll
I
have
don't
it.
know if that, because that was the
Oh,
Department of
the
Health
office was
office
funding,
There was federal
Yeah,
funding,
right.
that was a grant,
right.
so I
yeah.
don't know if that exists
And the
anymore.
commission now is under that was something that was moved. It's under the Department of Health. So
So
as
the
opposed to-
Health Equity Commission.
the Health Equity Commission,
Is
right?
that its formal name?
I'll double check.
Council or,
Okay.
it's either council or commission, one
Who
or
would
the other.
appoint a member? I'm sort of wondering, do you want the director of the Office of Racial Equity to appoint a member? Or do you want somebody else to appoint a member of Health Equity Advisory Commission?
Oh, I think the commission should
It's going to
appoint.
select.
They can
They
select,
can
yeah.
select a member, right?
So right now we have two individuals with a rare disease. We have,
Caregiver.
a caregiver. We have the Department of Health. We've deleted Vermont Health Access. We've deleted financial regulation. We've deleted, Office of Racial Equity, but we have inserted the, racial.
Well, Dale
Healthcare.
further.
We've added Dale,
Right.
and we have, said, the
A
health,
member of the
member of the Health Equity Commission
Commission
or council or
selected
whatever.
by the council.
But, yeah. Okay, so that's sort of the first group. Let's sort of still make our way through this and then we'll count them up and see if
Yeah,
other people need to, so far we have a net reduction of one. Okay, representative of an academic research institute.
Teresa said jump in.
Jump in, Eric. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
I was
I
banging
can't see you beyond the flowers.
Flowers right there. No, I was banging away last night and taking a peek at some of the other councils that have already been established throughout this country.
Yeah.
And kind of saw a pattern on people that are on, and registered nurses that have experience in treating rare diseases, pharmacists with knowledge of the understanding of the drugs in regards to rare diseases, and also representation from like the state's Medicaid. And also interesting, when I was going through some of the stuff, just last year, North Carolina removed their oversight from the medical school and then turned it back on over to the state's Department of Health and
Of
Human
Health.
Services.
Yeah,
So
that's.
they are no longer the advisory council is no longer being overseen by their school of medicine.
All right, so you get extra points for extra research.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
All right, I'll see everybody later.
Yeah, you know. It's like, I'm sorry, but I want to point out that this blue is no longer blue, it is red. That's great, Eric. I think from the perspective of Medicaid, that's where we just got rid of DIVA, that's Medicaid. But that information, it's really about obtaining claims information and data from there, which any of these members, can do through their action. So I don't think they have to be a member per se to access their information. I think that we're, really looking, like they have representative of biopharma industry. That just makes me nervous, to be
Yeah.
perfectly honest.
And there was a pattern too. Everyone has people there with lived experience.
Yeah.
Number two, everyone had, your doctors that are within the field experience with rare diseases, the pharmacists and some other.
Yeah,
it was-
I mean, I would rather have a pharmacist
Yeah,
No,
as
yeah.
opposed to a biopharma industry.
yeah.
And perhaps even the result of this, the conclusions of this commission, we could send to the biopharma industry and say, hey, it's, pressing need.
Yeah, exactly.
So we could communicate that way.
And I think likewise, both in terms of Medicaid, but also commercial insurance, I think part of this group's function would be to identify
Yeah.
issues with that. And then that would be a recommendation or next
Two.
step. So I would also take out Blue Cross Blue Shield and MVP.
Yeah, if we're gonna take out Medicaid, we should. take
Yeah,
out Blue Cross
exactly,
Blue Shield,
because
so.
that's
That's net 3, right?
And so, okay, so we have, we kind of jumped ahead a little
Yeah,
bit.
sorry.
So, no, that's all right. We were,
Yeah.
no, it's all good. So, so we have, I haven't heard anybody say ditch the academic researcher.
Yeah, I think you need that.
Okay,
No, you need that.
Should be. No mind, I'm just thinking.
okay, that's all right. You can think out loud. That's permitted. And we.
Well,
We need a caregiver.
Are we exploring the initiative of it being underneath the UVM medical?
We're talking about that, but not, yeah, but even if it's under, even if they're sponsoring, that doesn't replace having a.
You almost need two, someone looking at rare diseases in older Vermonters and someone in children, because or I don't know how you find that balance between the two,
I think
because,
that's the geneticist.
yeah,
Don't we say something about?
We have
geneticists? That would be, that would
something
be
about
the,
UVM Center on Aging and then something around
I was wondering about that.
children's, so
And
that
you're
you
wanting
have,
to, you're
both.
adding people.
I know, but
No, but I mean, I think this group will,
how do you find somebody that does both?
I don't think that they will, I think they will incorporate both, even if some of the members are oriented one or the other. I can't imagine them not
Right.
keeping that
And we've
agenda.
had in other groups like this where they can, like we
Yeah.
put in there, they can collaborate with like
Mhm.
relevant
Yes.
stakeholders or experts, right? Because
They
we
can have
can't.
subcommittees that are not official members.
Well, the other thing is that we could say with two individuals living with a rare disease, at least one of which must be an older Vermonter.
Sure.
That's a good idea.
No.
And then because the caregiver, that could be a caregiver of an older person, but that's probably more likely to be a
Child.
parent.
Parent.
And so,
What do you think about that?
Yeah.
People okay with that? Okay.
Some quick Google research would indicate that about 70% of rare diseases are identified in childhood. So
Yes.
just in deciding what weight we want to give to ensuring someone with experience of older runners.
Yeah, I think it's an important point that we need.
one, at least
At
one.
least one
The
individual
caregivers
representing.
will probably be.
The caregiver will
Of young
representing
children.
parents most likely, yeah.
Unless we want to say, because we're gonna single out older, we're gonna make sure to have an older, maybe it should specify the parent of a child living with a rare disease, so that we don't end up with the caregiver. It's more likely gonna end up being a parent, but it could end up then being, a caregiver of an older adult, and then we're not being sure that we have child representation.
What do people think about that? People understand what I was just saying, so it's highlighting under caregiver of a person with a rare disease, essentially highlighting that as a parent of a child under.
I think
18
parents
or
are a
whatever.
huge part of this
Mhm.
whole discussion and then that ensures that we've got the balance of both what Dan was raising, that both ends of the spectrum are theirs. If we're specifying one of the people with a rare disease is older and the caregiver is specifically a parent, so.
Well, I feel like if we're going to specify an older, we have to also specify on the other age range.
That's
So,
why, that's
yeah.
what made me think of it.
Yeah,
I wonder for someone who's a parent, caregiver, or witness we had yesterday, the doctor, his son is now an adult, so he would not qualify if we put
Correct.
18 or under.
right, that's true.
But yeah,
Well, could-
I'm wondering whether we need to limit it
parent.
because the parent has gone through it with a young child and maybe their
Right.
child is now an adult.
I wouldn't limit by the age of the child, just a
say
parent, a parent of a person.
Mhm.
That's better.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
parent of a person rather than child, yeah. Then that's more open.
So instead of saying caregiver, saying parent of a person living with a rare disease,
Or guardian.
parent or.
Oh, right. Caught it. Yeah, good idea.
catch, Yep.
Good catch.
Okay, so that seems like consensus. Katie, parent or guardian, okay? We'll talk about who appoints who in a minute.
Oh, yeah, right.
I know.
We're back on that.
Yeah, we have to go back on that, all right. I think a physician, it's probably likely that we need a physician on this.
Yeah.
Healthcare professional,
Yeah.
and, a nurse. And if we say nurse, are we, is that automatically including like advanced practice nurses?
I'm not sure because we need to find out the American Nurses Association Vermont chapter, who they represent.
Right.
That's one of the ones, that's one where I think it is an important voice. The voice could still come in if we're really looking, when we look at the total numbers, that to me is the next on the list of less essential. Yeah, where are we now?
No, I was just trying to do a Google search.
Oh, the Vermont chapter, right.
ANA Vermont. Oh, look, they have a website and everything. Legislative activity. Ooh.
Membership,
Mm. Become a member. That I don't know. We have nurses in our body. We can ask Mari or.
yeah.
I think there's somebody else there. I can't remember who it is, but,
Let's see.
Leslie's a nurse too. Okay. So, let's ask about that.
Now, who do all these people report to?
They're part of a committee,
Yeah, but
so they
who
don't,
do they report to,
um,
this committee?
well, we haven't had a decision about whether it is gonna be under the health department or whether it might be under you.
Well, she already said the health department's already burdened.
I understand what she said, but it's our responsibility to decide.
I know,
where to
but
put it.
we shouldn't be burdening.
Well, what they said was they couldn't do it within their existing resources, so we would have to decide whether we were going to
That's
add
the only trouble
resources.
with these bills. They're putting a lot of burden on so many people. Okay,
Well, we have to we have to weigh whether or not the public benefit is worth the perceived burden. Do you know what I mean?
no, but whatever, I'll go with.
Well, no, I'm just, that's part of the decision making that we make on all bills is like, if the public is going to, if the broader public, like up to 65,000 people in Vermont. But
The
that's,
health department is already doing this, she said yesterday in her testimony, and the health department is already has plenty of data.
actually, they don't have an advisory council.
No, I know they don't have an advisory,
Yeah.
because that's what you're doing, but
Yeah.
she already said it's a burden on their, whatever.
Yeah, well, no, I understand what you're saying. She said that given the circumstances of not knowing what the federal government is going to do and what their grants are, that they couldn't do it within their existing resources.
Correct.
But if
So
we,
we're creating something without knowing the
Well, we're
future.
not, that's why we're asking UVM if they would take it on. We're looking for other
Okay.
options.
Okay,
okay, so,
They represent registered nurses.
yeah, and I just don't know where the advanced degree nurses fall into that.
I
You know,
Yeah.
So I'm not sure it particularly matters, but it might matter to nurses.
We don't want to exclude.
I don't want to
them
exclude
as
them.
Possible, because there might be somebody who has a real interest in.
Right.
them.
We'll ask our nurses and they can tell
We
us.
can go back to it. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, and so, rare disease organization, what about that?
Well, my first reaction was it was important, but when we start thinking, probably one of those others would be a member. It goes to the total count, I think,
Yeah,
to not have it, to see what our total number is. I mean, that potentially would be.
I guess what I'm saying is that thinking about is, so if that ends up being the Alzheimer's Association or that, Alzheimer's not a rare disease, if that ends
right.
up being the ALS, Or if that ends up being some,
They're gonna be more specialized.
Right, I was
Yeah.
thinking of it meaning the group that, but it doesn't necessarily, yeah, maybe.
yeah, I mean,
I think I would prefer to, just because of voice and power and strength of a slightly more organized organization or whatever, that it might be better to speak about collaboration, working in collaboration with one or more organizations. Not that.
Not taking them
Not to have
as a
them be,
member.
yeah, not having them as a member.
You give a lot of weight to whoever.
Yeah,
that's what I
Yeah.
mean, to one
Yeah.
particular
One
condition.
particular.
It would be, if there was a national organization that you could include, because then they would be looking at what other states are doing and bring that perspective to Vermont.
Well, I think
Isn't the whole group, isn't the whole RDAC going to be looking at
Yeah,
some of
but
that?
if you
But
had
I
a
think-
national. Go ahead.
No, I just think, I think they would bring that in. That's the kind of
Right.
people they bring in and not be a member of the Vermont Advisory Group. That's
I
my,
think they would consult with
Yeah.
the various groups.
I think we should
but,
actually
yeah.
add that.
Yeah,
Right.
consult
Yeah.
with the various groups.
Okay,
that
so,
have-
Katie, we're getting rid of, representative of a rare disease patient organization.
Okay, and I think you got rid of biopharma, but I was multitasking.
We did not get rid of
You did
biopharma.
not.
We substituted
Changed it to
pharmacist.
Pharmacist, great. Okay.
Okay, so how many does that leave us? One.
well.
Okay, I came up with 11, so let's see how many.
Let's see what Katie has.
came up with.
Pressure.
Yeah, really.
so 11 would be really good. It's uneven.
Exactly, it's uneven and it's a reasonable amount.
Experience.
Yeah, so that's where I got 12. I think.
Oh, you might be right.
As far as people.
I was counting categories.
11, I still got 11
Repeat.
people.
Okay.
All right, let's make sure we've
So
got
we got it.
everybody.
Are we doing A through D? Did those all stay?
We got, no,
Oh, then it's 11.
B.
Yeah, that's where we got down by one, yes.
I was out for that.
How
point.
about I just read you what I have?
All right, I don't count.
I have Department of Health, Dale, Member of Health Equity Advisory, 2 from individuals with lived experience, academic research, parent or guardian, physician, nurse, geneticist or genetic counselor, pharmacist. What was that? That was 12?
I got 10 at that time.
Well, no, I think she was reading it quickly. It sounded like 2 of the things she said was one
Okay,
category.
one more time.
So what, slowly, right.
Okay,
I think it's-
Department of Health,
I've got 11 3 times.
Yeah.
Dale, Health Equity.
Yeah.
2 individuals with rare diseases, academic research, parent or guardian, physician, nurse, geneticist or genetic counselor, pharmacist.
Okay.
11 it is, yeah. That's a good,
And then adding language to collaborate with any stakeholders as the advisory committee deems appropriate.
Yes, I think we want to specifically call out the National Organization of Rare Disorders, NORD. And any other.
Okay.
And then, okay, so right now, what we have in terms of who appoints whom, the 2 individuals with the rare disease, one by the speaker, one by the Senate Committee on Committees.
that's an interest, yeah, is that? I guess that makes sense. Because there isn't a state organization that could do it in terms of a branch of the national organization. They don't have a,
Right, I mean, they're
Yeah.
going to reach out to,
yep.
the speaker will probably reach out to us to ask us.
Right,
what do we
right.
think?
That's right.
So I'm wondering why the,
Because there isn't like, we're not calling out a specific membership of an organization. So like,
So
so like,
somebody's got to do it.
But can the speaker not provide two? I'm not asking, I'm not trying to defend one of the
no,
other.
no, I
but why-
understand.
Why do we have one from the speaker and one from the Senate?
Oh, balance.
Oh,
Balance.
The Senate,
Yeah.
when the bill gets to the Senate, if it was two by the House, forget it.
Okay,
They would say, okay, we're gonna say two by the Senate. Forget it.
all right, understood, thank you.
Okay, and then representative academic research by the speaker, and then caregiver by the Senate Committee on Committees.
That's.
Again, see balance?
Yeah.
I get it now.
Doc, you look like you had a question or a thought.
Yeah, do we have, does it give us any pause to have representative of academic research institution, likely to be UVM, if we're also asking UVM to house this advisory council? Does that present any
I
concern?
don't think so,
No.
because
Okay,
if we were going to have the health department do it, we're having the commissioner of health be a member.
sure.
In Vermont, you have to have multiple hats.
Well, but I wonder if maybe F should specify, because this really is just organizational, to specify a researcher from. Maybe it
As
could be,
opposed to a representative.
right, maybe it could be a researcher appointed by the institution.
Academic researcher.
An academic researcher, right, because we don't want it to be, their PR person or something.
Yes,
Yeah.
and while I think it is probably germane to say that receives grant funding for rare disease research, I don't,
It's that does rare disease, right?
It's not about receiving.
it's not about
grant.
receiving the funding.
Right.
I think it should be about a researcher
It's level.
who conducts rare disease research.
Research, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
It's conceivably the academic. Yeah, you want to link the two, otherwise it could be a representative from an academic research institute that's studying Elizabethan literature.
Right, exactly. Well, shall we put that in?
And or.
so I'm also going to ask, and I know we always like to keep things in the state, but what if there's a really great researcher at Dartmouth?
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
think that
that
we,
doesn't have to be in state with the world of Zoom.
and in the state, right, yeah.
I would imagine too, if I were sitting on a panel like that, and if I were a parent or I were someone closely engaged, I would want to have the best researcher on the team. And if I know someone in New Hampshire or New York or whatever,
Or wherever, really.
I might really want them on
Yeah.
this panel.
So I think we'll delete in the state, Katie.
An academic researcher
Yes.
Yeah.
Who does
who
rare
does,
disease research.
yeah.
So delete the grant funding part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who knows what? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we may want to,
Working.
we may want to find somebody from Johns Hopkins or the
Mhm.
Mayo Institute or something.
If they're
If they're
willing,
willing,
yeah,
yeah.
willing, then it's great.
Yeah.
I would imagine the national organization has connections and can say, here's your person.
Yeah, this would be the ideal, yep.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the same question, and maybe it's not as relevant in these next two things about the physician and the nurse practicing in Vermont. So for instance, we did hear from the dad yesterday, he wasn't able to find any healthcare providers in the state to deal with his son's condition.
Well,
But do we want the physician who can make that link to what is available?
that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking, yeah.
Identifying gaps.
Yeah,
Because if you get someone from Boston, they may act like, well, all of this is available,
yeah.
and it's not.
You really want them, right, to
Yeah, I
have
think
that
for the
insight. yeah.
Doctor and nurse, it
Okay.
is important to
Yeah.
have someone, because they would know what's
Yeah,
here.
and well, maybe we need to bring here or not.
Exactly what the
Yeah,
gaps are.
okay.
We have to head off to another.
Yes, that's good. I think we got through the membership part, which is gonna be the toughest part, I think.
Right, because the rest, and the rest of the appointments are not. I mean, the
Have fun
pharmacy
downstairs.
is gonna be the Pharmacy Association.
Yes, okay, and so we've deleted number 2 in the event there's an even number of members. Okay, and we deleted that. Okay, that got rid of that. So
And
powers,
instead, we put in they shall consult with which KU.
yeah,
Yeah.
so powers and duties. Advisory council shall conduct the following activities for the benefit of individuals impacted by rare diseases in Vermont. Convening public hearings, making inquiries, soliciting comments. So this is about an initial needs assessment. So I do have some questions about that. Because there, as we heard from the health department yesterday, there are so many rare diseases. I'm just wondering if we need to think about how this is worded somewhat. Because I guess I'm just wondering if, an individual with dwarfism in Vermont is going to have the same needs assessment, or the same needs as an individual with Fragile X syndrome. Probably not. So I'm just wondering how realistic is to think about developing a needs assessment across so many.
And I actually
Areas.
was not reading it closely enough. I thought it was more about, and maybe it's what it needs to be, about identifying like how many in each category so that we have a picture in Vermont. Needs assessment is much more of, it almost
It's different.
requires individual by individual
Yeah.
to figure out.
I'm not sure this is feasible, I guess is what
Right.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to suspend this discussion for right now because we have a witness who is here and ready. So it's still on this same area of conversation. So let's say hello to Ashley. Hello, welcome to the House Human Services Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. As you can tell, we're in the markup phase of this.
Should I sit here?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and let us just do a brief round of introductions so who's here, who you're speaking to, what part of the state, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
My name's Teresa Wood. I'm from Waterbury, and I also represent Bolton, Bealscore, and Huntington.
And Donahue, I'm from Northfield and also represent Berlin.
Good morning, Dan Noyes, represent Wolcott, Hyde Park, Johnson, and Belvedere.
Brenda Steady, East Milton, Westwood.
Doug Bishop, representing Colchester's Chittenden 20 district.
Morning, I'm Zon Eastis. I live in Guilford and I also represent Vernon.
Great. Hi, I'm Esme Cole and I represent Hartford.
And I'm Ray Garofano. I live in Essex and I also represent Essex Junction.
Nice to meet you, Laurie.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. So my name's Ashley Michaud. I grew up in the Northeast Kingdom, now live in Grand Isle. And I am here as a caregiver of a 7-year-old daughter who is diagnosed with 4 rare congenital and genetic conditions. I also work for Vermont Family Network and I'm their genetic navigator. So I help families go through the genetic world and finding a diagnosis and advocating for their needs, helping them connect to resources when they have a diagnosis, support groups, those type of things. And I also coordinate our family faculty. So using family voices to teach family-centered care to our next generation of nurses and professional doctors. So kind of a wealth of experience in this world, I'd say. And my goal today is just to share our family story, kind of in a narrative style, what we've been through, the joys, the challenges, and how I view an RDAC as being really essential to the future of her care and our life. So I'll start at the beginning. Hazel was born in February 2008.
Hazel, is that what you said?
Hazel, yes. February 2018, we had a challenging pregnancy, labor, delivery. And I sort of half joke that we had 1 week of that newborn bliss. She was tiny, so we were being followed very closely for her weight. And we went in for a weight check. I think it was around a week old. And our family doctor said, and we have your newborn screening results. I vaguely remember maybe her heel being pricked, but really no concept of what was happening to us at that time. And we were told that she could potentially have cystic fibrosis. And so they had coordinated everything to go up to UVM, to have her sweat test, and meet with a genetic counselor, although we did not know that until we walked into the room. And it was this very chaotic newborn experience. Thankfully, she's just turns out to be a carrier of cystic fibrosis. But that was really our first foray into that medical world. Over the next month, she continued to not eat very well, not grow. We discovered she had a tongue and lip tie. There were no providers in our area at the time who would do the laser frenectomy. So we traveled all the way to
Again, she had a what?
a tongue and lip tie, so a tether.
Oh, okay.
And so we traveled to Albany, New York to have it released, which was quite a journey with a small infant. And we got there, the procedure was done, it was wonderful. And the dentist is looking at her. And I remember just holding her like this. He's like, her sclera are very blue. I would not recommend Googling that because nothing good comes from that. And so initially we're very worried. We go home. We're also noticing she's not turning her head to our voices. She's just kind of staring through the blinds. So starting to see that she's not meeting some milestones. We quickly get into our family doctor, who is wonderful and recognizes those red flags and says, okay, I don't know what I don't know. Let's get you in to see some professionals. We started with ophthalmology. They diagnosed her with something called delayed visual maturation. So her eyes worked functionally, but her brain could not interpret what she's seeing. She said, this is what it is. We'll see you in a few months. We leave there, and we're pulling out, and I'm turned to my husband. I'm like, they just told us she can't see. How is she going to continue to grow and develop? So I come from a world of special ed. I immediately referred us to early intervention. And she was about 2.5 months old, I think, at that time. We then saw genetics, who was like, I don't know, I really want to consult with neurology. We saw neurology, who was like, nothing's really standing out, but maybe she had a stroke in utero. How would you feel about an MRI? And so my husband are like, tell us more about that. And they're like, well, the benefit of doing it right now is she doesn't need sedation. You could nurse her, swaddle her to sleep, we'll be able to do it. And so we're like, okay, let's do that. If it had been another 10 days and she had needed sedation, I can guarantee we would have said, no, we're not going to sedate our very tiny baby right now. So she goes in, we have this MRI. A few days later, we get a phone call to come in and discuss the results. And I apologize, I always tear up at this part. We walk into what felt like a really large exam room with 2 doctors. So we knew it probably wasn't great results. They showed me the MRI, and in the middle, there's this molar tooth. And I'm like, boy, I don't know if I've ever seen an MRI. I didn't know there was a molar tooth sign in our brain. That's kind of interesting. Turns out we don't really want that there. That was one marker for her having something called Joubert syndrome, which is a rare genetic brain malformation. There's about 1 in 100,000 diagnosed rate. I know of one other family diagnosed in Vermont with this condition. There's not a lot of research on it. They're still discovering genes. I think there's about 30 to 40 genes discovered currently, all very different presentations. And so luckily we're in early intervention. The next year of our life is a revolving door of therapists, developmental, OT, PT, speech, vision. I resigned from my job to help coordinate her services and be there for her. A huge financial stress for my husband to then become our sole provider. But we've got things good. She's doing okay. She's a really happy, sweet baby. And then at around 19 months old, she gets her first really significant illness. I think it was probably RSV. They never swabbed her. Different world back in 2018, 2019. And we ended up in the ED. She needed steroids for her breathing. And then she just had this chronic cough that doesn't go away. We get in to see pulmonology, and they're like, maybe it's reactive airway disease. We're going to follow her. And then March 2020 comes around and the world changes drastically. And she's every, I feel like 4 or 5 weeks, I'm calling. Her cough has come back. We need more antibiotics. It's just this vicious cycle of a very chronically ill child. In July, the hospital opened back up. We were able to get her in for bronchoscopy and laryngoscopy to kind of figure out what's going on. She did not do super well with that procedure. She really struggled to maintain breathing. It was, I think, very scary for everyone in that room. She was so little. But they discovered she has what is her second rare congenital condition was a laryngeal cleft. So she was aspirating everything that should have been going down to her stomach was going into her lungs. We ended up back in the hospital, I think 3 weeks later, with a very critically ill child. Her lungs were full of bacteria and fungus. We had maybe a 10-day hospital stay. They worked so hard to get her healthy, placed an NG tube, put her, so NPO, she couldn't eat anything, really tried to get her stable so she could have this repair. And thankfully they did. So we thought, great, we can go back to life of just developmental services. Things are okay. And things didn't get better. She continued to lose weight. She was failure to thrive. She ended up having a G-tube placed in January 2021. And she's just chronically ill. We, around kind of, when she was about a year old, we had decided, our neurologist here had moved on and said, I think it's probably a good idea to go down to Boston for a second opinion. It's so rare. We want to make sure we're doing everything we can. With her condition, there is risk for kidney disease, liver failure. So there's a lot of monitoring that we have to be doing. And so we went down there and we got connected with a really wonderful neurometabolic geneticist who actually was trained in Canada, and Jobert happens to be kind of prevalent in Canadian. So he had experience with this, and he's just super wonderful. And one of our follow-ups, he's like, well, would you like to see immunology for this? I'm hearing a lot of red flags. I'm like, okay, send us on we go to the next. And we did a ton of testing, and it turns out this is her third rare condition. It doesn't have a name. I don't know anyone else who has this, but her B cells and T cells, particularly the ones that are supposed to remember what to do when you get sick, don't exist. Her T cells in particular are at 0%, and her B cells are trending down. She had low circulating IgG as well, and her pneumococcal vaccinations hadn't worked. It made complete sense that it looked like every illness she had was the first time she'd gotten sick, and it would last a very long time. So it's making sense. Now we're just trying to discover some more information about it. So we go on, do some more genetic testing. We have a primary immunodeficiency panel that turns up nothing. We are able to get her whole genome sequenced, and we're really hoping we could just have a name, have an answer, and we still don't. That turned up nothing for that, but we did figure out that she has a fourth rare condition. She has a partial metabolic deficiency that's X-linked. So she's got another X that helps her ammonia kind of balance out, but it does mean my husband has this late onset condition. He's asymptomatic at this point, but we just kind of never know. And so this all happened during the pandemic, and, learning how to live with an immunodeficiency that doesn't have a name, on top of all these rare conditions that kind of make her healthcare really complicated. Plus, she's very complicated developmentally. It's been challenging. In some ways, I think our story is really atypical in that we got really quick access to healthcare, and we got really quick answers overall and got her what she needed. But it's still a lot of advocacy, helping the school system understand a rare disease and what she needs for that has been challenging. Her pre-K experience was not great. There was a large lack of understanding in that facility. We ended up having to pull her because of health concerns. She misses a lot of school for both appointments and illness. And yet she's doing super well. She's in an integrated first grade classroom. She's a very active participant member academically. She's learning and doing everything a first grader should do from that standpoint. Her motor skills are very delayed. Her social skills are a little delayed as well. She has apraxia of speech. So it took her until 5 to learn how to talk. So that's a lot of our story in a nutshell, very quick version of our story in a nutshell. and there's a lot of good that's come out of that. Because of our lived experience, I've been able to go back to work for Vermont Family Network in a job that feels really fulfilling to connect with families. I think this week alone, in the last 48 hours, I have spoken with 4 different families living with rare disease of children. And that connection in the community is really hard to build, particularly in Vermont, when you might be the only person who has that condition. But together, our stripes might be a little bit different, but together we, a lot of our stories are so incredibly similar. And hearing someone else's story and saying, oh my gosh, that was so similar to my experience as well. And oh, wow, I'm going to take that advice. I love how that worked out for you. I'm going to try that, is really powerful. One of the two, I think, of the biggest challenges of living with a rare disease is the isolation that comes from it and not being visible to the world. And a lot of rare diseases are invisible, so you don't know. I'm sure everyone around this table is in contact with someone living with a rare disease, whether you know it or not. And so it can be really isolating. And building that community, I think, is incredibly important. And that's an honor for me to do through my work at Vermont Family Network, is making sure that families have that village for themselves. The other part is, if you're going through this grief of having these diagnoses and life shifting from what you thought it was going to be to something different, and then the systems get in the way. And to be honest, that's the hardest part of it. We just spent an entire year getting her Katie Beckett Medicaid waiver renewed, one entire year of going through that. And I get the letter, which is like the best letter I've ever received in the mail. And it says, you're good for a year. And I'm like, well, does that mean I should start the renewal now?
Right.
Or she just needed to have her laryngeal cleft repaired again in March. And we got a letter denying her ICU stay, which is standard procedure when you work on your airway because of edema, swelling. And so it's just like navigating, who do I call? Who's the care coordinator that needs to help manage this? She has infusions for her immune system. They are probably roughly about $5,000 a week. Insurance right now is paying for it. And she has her Katie Beckett waiver, which is a huge help. I worry about her future. She is an incredibly capable girl who can pursue her dreams just like any other 7-year-old. I worry that she's going to have to choose between pursuing her dreams or having adequate healthcare to keep her alive. Particularly in the world we live in today, she brings so much value, and we want the world to celebrate her and to be part of it, her voice to be heard.
Do you have a picture of Hazel?
I do have my phone. I can.
That would you mind sharing?
I was thinking that too. Isn't that funny?
Picture of Hazel. When you talk about the Katie Beckett process, for people who might not know what Katie Beckett process is. Katie Beckett is something that actually happened during the Reagan administration. It was a way for children's to become Medicaid eligible, to disregard parent income because the child would otherwise be served in a quote unquote institutional setting. And so this enables them to have access to Medicaid. But it's unfortunate you have to do that on an annual basis. Sometimes it's not a renewal thing because it's a lifelong condition, which it sounds like she will have challenges.
Yeah.
Not really sure. Oh my gosh, he is adorable. Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, and the first time we actually applied, we were denied Katie Beckett. And then as she got older and she got sicker, we were able to get it, which was really important when she turned 3 to continue.
It's unbelievable to hear that she was denied the first time.
Yeah,
That she applied, honestly, when I think about it. And but she's adorable.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So like a typical week for us, she goes to school. She has all of her IEP services. It's pretty robust. We're incredibly thankful for our Grand Isle school community. It's really a gem up there.
It is.
But, we still do outpatient PT and OT twice a month. She has two different SLPs. One we see weekly for her apraxia to help with her articulation. We just were able to find a feeding, swallowing, dysphagia specialist, SLP, who we are thankfully only seeing every other week because it's a lot. Grand Isle's wonderful, but we're traveling.
Right, just
Most places.
Yeah.
Um,
Does she need to have you referenced it twice.
Yeah,
Will she have that done more than as she grows?
we don't know.
Yeah.
It's usually, they told us only once to begin with. We don't know.
Yeah.
What the future holds there for that.
It sounds like she's teaching the medical professionals
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
Just through her own life and her family and your advocacy for her.
The travel to appointments in UVM, we go down to Boston. Gosh, probably every 6 weeks or so for different follow-ups down there because she has low vision. We have it's neurologically based. We see a low vision specialist down there, actually 3 of them because they don't exist in Vermont.
Mm-hmm.
Her Hizentra needed to be prescribed by her geneticist here. Infectious disease immunology here would not prescribe it for her, even though it's originates in Boston. So it's all of these hurdles that we have to cross. And I just feel like from my story and these stories I hear from other families who are walking similar paths, that having a place like an RDAC to discuss these system changes that could be made and be creative about how we can provide healthcare to people who don't fit in that typical healthcare box, who are high consumers, but also are very valued members of our society. How can we make sure that they're seen, heard, and the decisions being made for them are being made with them?
Yeah.
That's what I think is so important about the RDAC, is that it includes those voices.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, I'm just like, frankly, in awe of the amount that you have gone through to seek the right medical care for your daughter, and having I'm sure it feels at times like a continuing battle to get what she needs. And thank you for providing that support to other parents and family members who are going through similar things. That's, I think, one of the most valuable things that we hear from people is the sense of isolation that they feel, whether it's in this situation or you're a older child taking care of your parent with Alzheimer's, or you're a person with ALS and not realizing there are other people with that condition, maybe even just 2 towns over or something. So the social connection and just that sense of feeling not alone is so important for people.
Really is valuable. I think it's one of those critical pieces that we overlook. And when you can fit that piece in, in really miraculous ways for a lot of people.
Yeah. Go ahead, Representative Bishop.
So a question connected to that, and thank you for your testimony and the work you're doing with families. Just before you were asked to join us at the table, we were making our way through the draft of this bill, and we got to a section on powers and duties. And more specifically, it talked about convening public hearings, make inquiries, and solicit comments from the general public to assist the advisory council with an initial needs assessment of individuals with a rare disease. And the question was raised, how does one do an initial needs assessment for rare disease when there's so many different rare diseases? Do you see any common themes or things that can be done to get sort of a global needs assessment for the rare disease community? Or is it so specific that it would be hard to accomplish?
I think there are common themes. I think it's are there specialists? Are you able to get the adequate care you need with the specialists that our state has? And I have it from the pediatric lens, and I think it's even probably more challenging, the adult side of care as well. If you have to travel, where are you traveling to? And what is the burden of that? Thankfully, Medicaid does reimburse, but there's hoops you have to jump through. And it's 21 cents a mile, which is have you seen gas prices in the car repairs?
1/3 of what the federal
rate.
Yeah.
I mean, I am extremely thankful for that 21 cents, but also the legwork I have to do to get to that 21 cents is it's silly sometimes.
Mhm.
Pharmaceutical costs. I also sit on the Patient Family Advisory Council for the Children's Specialty Center at UVM. And we had our meeting earlier this week, and one mom was saying, and they were covering one medication, and now they're not covering it, and it's like $10,000 a month. And this is a well-connected family with wonderful insurance. What about those families that don't have the privileges having great resources? We know that exist in Vermont. How are they going without care? Do they know how to advocate for their care in these cases? Do they know that what they're being presented, there could be other options available to them? So I think thinking about the pharmaceutical costs, access to designated agencies. We were no longer eligible for our designated agency because her condition is not considered a developmental delay under their definition, and she doesn't have a mental health condition. So we lost access to our designated agency, which means we lost access to flexible family funding or family managed respite that we could have benefited from. So there's all of these. If you're rare, by definition, you're not going to fit into the typical box.
Right.
And so then you're left out of a lot of these essential supports that could impact your family's quality of life.
I'm curious about, the health department has a division of children with special health needs. And I'm just wondering, from a parent perspective or an advocate, you're both, has that, they've made some changes there in the last few years. And I'm just wondering what your perception of the any supportive services that you may or may not have received from them.
We utilized them when Hazel was much younger. Actually, they were really instrumental in helping us get our Katie Beckett and filling out that paperwork. Like, I consider myself fairly well educated, and that paperwork is a nightmare. And it's very antiquated as well.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Thank you so much for being here, and appreciate your perspective. So some of the things that we want this commission to work on, I heard transportation issues was an issue, and then also this Katie Beckett paperwork and the ability to be able to navigate that. As you think of things that we should include, like, what do you wish you had access to looking in hindsight, like what was kind of the number one thing that kind of we should make sure we include to really be having this commission think about?
It sort of just got into place, but complex care hasn't existed in Vermont. UVM has worked really hard to get a complex care social worker in place to kind of bridge that gap. And that's been really instrumental, that I have one point person I can call when medical health issues come up. I think, Blue Cross Blue Shield has their case managers, which have been helpful at times. Medicaid doesn't have anything like that that exists for families. And I often get calls from a lot of families who are really struggling to figure out how to get the care that they need. And if they're on Medicaid, there's one hand, there's got some good access to other things, but they don't have that anchored support. It's often left to families to do all of that care coordination, which moms, I think in particular, end up being very underemployed because of it is another job to coordinate her care. And I think we have it on the easy side. I know a lot of families that their needs are much higher, and it's much more challenging to meet that. And they're often left wondering, is mom going to get her healthcare needed, or is the child going to get their care needed? And it's not even talk about parenting breaks and access to qualified respite, because that doesn't really exist in our state.
You've done incredible work. There's nothing easy.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dan.
No, I'm just thinking about the access to insurance and helping you navigate that. And you talked about the specialized agency, you don't qualify for that. And maybe that should be one of the things they look at, because the case management that may be available, at least the case management aspect might be helpful if there's a policy change for this commission to really look at that and figure out, like, how do we not have one thing in our policy that says, oh, that would eliminate someone with a rare disease or a child with a rare disease like you're working with. Maybe that's something that we include for them to come back to us, deliverables, if you will.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. That would be, I think, a fantastic, it would be great to be connected with NCSS and, I don't think we'd be high consumers of that service, but case management would be helpful. So another voice at the education table for her.
Okay.
Access to respite would be wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Respite.
Respite,
Yeah.
for sure.
Did you have access to Children's Integrated Services?
We did.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you were talking, I was thinking about, some of the things like when Hazel was younger, things that we know about in the system, but are not always easy to figure out how to access. And I can thinking along the lines that Dan is about, how we can assist individuals and families from even just understanding what is available. There's lots of gaps.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but there's also things that are available that people don't people don't know what they don't know. Do you know what I mean? Until you're in that situation of needing to figure it out. And then it's so difficult to try to figure it out. And sometimes you just don't even know where to look.
Be a truer statement about it. And, and all designated agencies function a little bit differently.
Yes.
Well, I think that is very challenging for families where they can get bridge program in one agency, they don't get it in the other, and then they're, feel left out, and then they don't get that case management or respite care that they could be entitled to, and so they end up really struggling.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Do you live in Grand Isle because it's closer to the services your daughter needs, or is that unrelated? Why you moved? I'm just curious in general, and maybe you have information from other folks. Do they make decisions like that?
A lot of families do. Unrelated, I have a good medical mom friend they were in Malone and had to travel to UVM for all of their medical care because there's a huge gap of pediatric services in that area, and they ended up having to move their whole life to Burlington. We live in Grand Isle because my husband owns a business in Plattsburgh, and I was working in Burlington, so Grand Isle was kind of that
in between, right?
Midway point for us. So yeah, that's how we ended up there. But it's a very small school, which is on one hand wonderful, but it also means that Hazel kind of stands out a little bit. And there's not that the adaptive community. We end up having to travel to find that for her.
Yeah. Yeah. Although it is a beautiful part of the state, right? Yeah, I know.
Where my husband's from.
Yeah.
Said he'd never lived there, so far out away from everything.
We don't have a pharmacy in our county, and that is a huge struggle of mine.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for sharing your story and being so open about the challenges and the joys that you've experienced. Hazel looks like a wonderful child, and she's lucky to have parents that have been such good advocates for her. And thank you for sharing so much of your story. We really, really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure to be able to be that voice for her and for other families from the state. So
there's lots of people listening to this conversation. You can't see them up there on screen, but we know because we hear from them. So there's lots of people listening to the conversation. So thank you so much for representing families so well here today.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, committee, we're going to take a brief break, and then we are going to be back to do some further markup on this bill before we go to lunch. Okay, so see you all at